what I just mentioned, $8,000. I couldn't afford $800 for an attorney, so maybe I better go buy one of those how-to books, or maybe my neighbor can help me out who knows a little bit about business law or whatever.
Right. Don't shortcut. And a lot of times people, based on past experience or based on where they're at, they see that. They look at the long-term investment. Look at your vision. Where do you want to go? Do you want to start off with 2 people and have a 50-person company? You need to look that direction. In my book, I talk about gain mentors. One is a good attorney, one that can help mentor you through your process, that can help set up your company so it's proper. My dad always said, you spend half your time in this world making your money, but you need to spend the other half keeping your money. And when you set up a company, you want to structure it. You want to structure it for liability purposes. You want to structure it for tax purposes, and you want to, basically line your ducks up before you even start your business. Next thing you need to do is...
There'll be a lot fewer business failures if people did that.
There'll be a whole lot fewer business failures, okay? And then create a business plan. And it's just as simple as buying hedgehogs. I mean, it's just that simple, because she's talking about $750. What if you're going to talk about $750,000? Process is the same. Innovate, implement,
basically the process is the same, but your daughter may have really excelled, and I'm glad that she did, basically, because with you as the mentor, basically, Rocky. But you know what I find, though, with business plans, the word that comes up more often than not when you talk to somebody about a business plan, either they tried to do one, they did do one, but many times they become frustrated over it, but it's the word overwhelmed. It looks so simple. And then people wonder, well, why do you have all this information? Why this, why that? I thought I just needed whatever. The other misperception many times is people think the only time I need a business plan is if I'm going to borrow money. Well, if you start a part-time business selling fruit on a fruit stand just on weekends in the summer, you ought to have something written down, a couple of sheets of paper or whatever.
I agree. And it is just that simple. But how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time, okay? Let's say you're going to sell widgets, and I know that's just the classic, scenario.
Well, I thought they weren't using widgets anymore. I thought they would. No.
Well, they're using widgets 0.2. So instead of the old regular widget, these are so much better.
Oh, those are the ones that are machined even better. Is that it?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But anyway, say you're going to sell widgets, and you think, okay, here's what my rent cost. Here's what the materials for the widget cost. Here's the labor, and then here's what I'm going to sell them for. There's your business plan right there, okay? Then once you set up just a basic skeleton, you can start adding to that, and you can start, innovating, implementing, quantifying, and then you can streamline your business plan as you go along. You don't have to have a 30-page business plan to get started, but you do need to have some kind of plan of where you're going. And then once your business plan, becomes, I like to call, purified or becomes more accurate, then at that point you can start profit planning. You have a business model.
Well, of course, the other analogy that we can use very easily, basically, we can use you, Rocky, as an example. Although you flew up from Texas, came into Boston, then came down here, you could have driven from Georgetown, Texas up here. But the question basically would be, and I don't think I know the answer, I absolutely positively know the answer. If you were going to drive from Georgetown, Texas to Waterford, Connecticut, well, of course, you might have had a GPS system, but you certainly would have wanted some idea of, well, how do I get there? You simply wouldn't say, well, I'm going to go on Interstate 93, for example, if you have such a thing in Texas. Well, that heads north, so I'll probably be up there sometime within 3 or 4 or 5 days. You'd have a traffic plan.
Exactly. You just plan it out. Now, on the flip side of that, and I don't mean to get too far off, but if I drove from Georgetown to here, instead of flying to here, I have a thing called opportunity cost. And what opportunity cost would be the money that I lost basically with the time I spent driving versus flying. It would probably be, well, in my case, be much greater than the...
Yes, I brought up a great point then, basically, that you kind of expanded upon that, basically. Again, the opportunity cost.
Yeah, and then that goes back to what you said earlier. Well, I can't afford an attorney. No, you cannot afford not to have a proper attorney to set up your business and to get things going. To make sure you get an accountant that fits your business.
Well, most people need both when they get started. They may not realize they do or should, but you've got legal documents on the one hand, setting up a business, for example, even a sole proprietorship. Many times they don't know, what sort of tax forms they should file, what sort of tax numbers, whatever. And then, of course, the accountant, from a standpoint of you've got to have an accounting system, a bookkeeping system, that sort of thing.
Classic example. Good friend of mine in the same business I am. Opened up as a sole proprietorship. Well, when you're in a sole proprietorship, you have to pay a lot more taxes than if you structure your business either through a LLC, a corporation, or something to that effect. I begged him you need to do this. You need to at least go see an attorney. It costs you $300 to sit down with him. Okay, it costs you $100 to sit down with your accountant. I can't afford that. But yet, he pays so many taxes, he can't quit his business because he has to pay the IRS.
But you know
He's trapped.
You know what a famous business consultant told me years ago? He told me basically that if people come up with that sort of response, that the response probably ought to be from the person sitting on the other side of the table, then you probably don't belong in business. If you don't see the need for it and can't quote unquote afford whatever that fee is, and of course years ago it wasn't the 100 and 300, it was perhaps less than that. But I'm John Trollin, this is Business Beat Live Special Edition. We'll be right back with Rocky Castleberry right after this short break.
I'm home.
Welcome back to Business Beat Live Special Edition as we continue our spirited discussion here with Rocky Castleberry from Georgetown, Texas. And Rocky, we talked during the break here about expanding on a discussion that we had earlier in the show, and I'd like to finish the show in that area because the more I think about it, the more important I think it is, and you share that same belief. Talking about changing your mindset, as I mentioned to you during the break, and then you can carry on from there. Basically, I would think, if I were, let's say, a business coach or advise one of my clients, that prior to changing the mindset, you'd want to kind of step back, maybe take a few days off, maybe go away on a couple of days vacation, kind of sit down basically and kind of maybe write down, for that matter, or if you got a laptop, put it on the laptop on the Word program, basically what's frustrating you or whatever, what are some of the problems you're having, what are some of the things maybe that I could do to change my course of action, then come into that mindset of positive mental attitude, I want to be successful, et cetera, and going forward in that regard.
Right. You know, and a lot of times we get in a business where we hit a lot of problems or frustrations, and we can't see the forest because of the trees.
And challenges. Sometimes it could be a problem.
Challenges.
Sometimes it's a challenge. It depends on the nature of the ad.
Yeah. You know, and I've tried very hard, and I've been pretty successful with this. I don't work weekends. One, I want to spend time with my family. That's number one in my life. And two is you've got to let your brain relax. You have to get away from the problems, relax your brain, and a lot of times, okay, it's just like building a jigsaw puzzle. Have you ever worked on a jigsaw puzzle and you can't find a piece that fits, and you walk out, you go walk around, you come back that afternoon, the next morning, and all of a sudden the pieces start fitting into place.
Well, you see, the same thing applies, so basically in the business field, though. Let's say, for example, you're an accountant or something of that nature, or maybe a tax preparer. You can look at something, you can't figure it out, and again, the exact same principle applies, Rocky. You leave it for a while, go to lunch, you leave it for a while, go get a cup of coffee, leave it till tomorrow morning, for example. If tomorrow's another work day, you come back and you look at it, and maybe where you spent 2.5 hours the day before, can't figure it out, 10 minutes maybe or less, well, there it is.
Exactly, and you know, I rarely work more than 8 hours a day because I know that if I work 12 or 14 hours a day, then my mind becomes muddled, it's hard to see. The next day I'm tired, I'm frustrated, but if you just back up and spend some time. My dad said, and he's a very successful businessman, he said, look, every once in a while take 2 or 3 days off, maybe 4 days, and that gives you a chance to clear your mind and then to properly, very focused, see what your business is doing, where it's going. Now, one thing that I try and strive for every day is to become less of a technician within my business and to become more of a business owner. Now, a true business owner would be a man that can walk away for 3 months or 6 months, come back to his business, and it is even more profitable than when he left. And of course, a lot of that goes into systems management. And I don't know that we have a whole lot of time to get into systems management, but perfect example, McDonald's, one of the largest corporations in the world, and it is ran by high school students. And why is that? Because they have their systems in place. They have their business in order. They have their plans in order. And they have their vision of where they want to go down in the future in order.
Yeah, of course, they've got instruction manuals basically, and almost each employee is basically assigned. One person takes care of the French fries, somebody else is grilling the burgers, somebody else is doing the milkshakes, somebody else is ringing out the registry, you know, that sort of thing. And it's really is, I mean, it's relatively a simple job.
Yeah, when the thing dings, you take the fries out of the fryer, you know, and that's where that's where I strive to get in my business. And as I do, it goes back to innovation, implementation, and quantification. And I know I keep saying that. But you know, I keep making my business plan and my business manual better and better and better. So it's homework. It takes homework. It takes self-discipline and so forth.
Of course, when you talk about doing your homework, of course, I suppose a lot of that has to do too with, for example, if we're talking about, let's say, stock investments, in terms of perhaps doing, matter of fact, I had Maria Bartiromo on years ago from CNBC. on Business Beat Live, and she wrote a book called Use the News. And basically she was kind of a proponent of, well, you don't need to go to this fancy investment advisor and that guy with a three-piece suit and a brand new Jaguar in the parking lot. Basically read it yourself, make your own decisions, that sort of thing. Which way should one go, though? And when you're talking about basically doing your homework, should you rely on somebody else, do it yourself, or maybe a little bit of both?
Okay. Let me tell you something that I've done in the past, and I bet a lot of us are guilty of this. First time I did stock...
Hope I'm not, but no.
The first time I did stock investments, I took my money and handed it to a stockbroker, and he says, well, what do you want to invest in? My response is, I don't know, whatever you think will make me money. I did zero homework, and guess what? I wasn't very successful. I would say, do your homework, self-discipline. I read books all the time. Read books, watch the news, talk to stockbrokers that you trust. And I'm not slamming stockbrokers as a whole, but a lot of them, you know, they're trying to get a commission. They're trying to make put money on the table for their family. Now, does that mean they're bad? Not necessarily. But what you need to do when you go to see a stockbroker, you need to be educated on what's going around you and what's going on in the world, and then you can take some of his advice. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to just interject basically, Rocky, was when you talk about basically doing your homework or whatever, maybe what one should do if they're going in to see a stockbroker maybe is have some idea of maybe some stocks they might like to invest in, again, off the internet, CNBC or some other program or a book or whatever. Gee, I read about this pharmaceutical company coming out with a new drug that has all sorts of promise, or I read about somebody that's going to have something that's twice as good as the Apple iPhone or whatever. Maybe a little bit of background information so they know at least when the fellow says, stockbroker says, maybe you invest in Apple, or invest in Apex Electronics maybe, which is a relatively new company, just picking a fictitious name, that you have a little bit more of a sense of that might be a wise decision, because we all know that you can deal sometimes with a stockbroker that's thinking more about his pocket than the client's pocket.
Right, and see, that's what I